The Galactic Senate was a furnace of alien voices. At its center, Senator Margaret Orlath rose with the cold fire of a verdict already written.
Resolution 9-114. The Terran Republic must dismantle 80% of its war fleet within 90 days or face immediate collective embargo.
Ambassador Thomas Carver listened with the patience of a man who knew the punchline of a joke the galaxy hadn't yet heard.
The Terran Republic votes no, but we welcome debate.
Your species built a machine of violence that threatens every peace. This is not a debate, it is a correction.
Thomas did not flinch. His fingers rested lightly on his datapad, and the corner of his mouth lifted, a private, knowing smile. The vote was scheduled. The debate would last 18 months. Margaret's block cheered. Thomas simply noted the date on his calendar.
Why does he not fight? He should be begging for concessions.
18 months is a generous window. So many things can happen.
And in that moment, the galaxy celebrated its victory over Earth, unaware that they had just set the clock on their own surprise. Weeks became months. Senator Margaret Orlath turned the debate into a crusade, and the galaxy fell in behind her.
The humans call their warships defensive. I have seen the weapon loadouts. There is nothing defensive about a fleet that can glass a moon.
The Terran Republic has never glassed a moon. We prefer negotiation.
He offers no counter-argument. He does not lobby. Is he incompetent? Or does he believe his own lies?
In his embassy office, late at night, Thomas sat before an encrypted terminal. The blue curve of Earth filled his window. The encrypted line to Earth Command was open. Thomas spoke only 3 words: proceed at pace. By month 12, 37 species had co-sponsored the resolution. Earth stood alone.
The vote will be a formality. The Terran Republic has no friends left.
Friends are useful, but not required. We will accept the Senate's decision, whatever it is.
And so the galaxy prepared to dictate Earth's disarmament, while Thomas checked his calendar and smiled. The vote arrived. Resolution 9-114 passed 387 to 12, an avalanche.
This is not a punishment. It is the dawn of a safer galaxy. The Terran Republic will learn that peace requires sacrifice.
The chamber erupted in cheers. In the human section, Ambassador Thomas Carver rose slowly, his expression unreadable.
The Terran Republic accepts this Senate decision. We will implement the terms as written.
Within the hour, a formal letter arrived from Earth. The Terran Republic accepts the terms of Resolution 9-114 in spirit. It requested 90 days for implementation. Thomas had penned the letter himself hours before the vote was called.
In spirit. He gives me a phrase that means nothing and everything. Why is this man never afraid?
We will honor every word of the resolution. 90 days is all we ask.
The Senate granted the request. Margaret's block toasted their victory. On Earth, the dismantling crews began their solemn duty. But in his embassy office, Thomas stood at the window and watched the countdown begin. And for the first time, his smile reached his eyes. Day 1. Obsolete cruisers were towed to salvage yards and cut apart for the cameras. The galaxy watched, satisfied. Ambassador Thomas transmitted his first compliance report at midnight. Then he opened an encrypted channel and spoke for 19 minutes. By day 7, Corvaxian border analysts noticed faint, repetitive energy pulses near the Caligo Nebula, dismissed as solar interference.
Ghost signals. Caligo is empty. There is nothing there worth pulsing about. I will flag it for later, but Thomas Carver never does nothing.
Thomas's encrypted communications quadrupled in week 2. Each night, the line to Earth Command stayed open for hours. On day 22, the border station picked up a second anomaly. Massive energy draws deep in the nebula. A priority alert was filed.
Priority alerts require evidence. But what evidence? The humans are dismantling in plain sight.
Thomas saw the same alert. He made a single note: maintain pattern. Then he went to sleep. Month 1 ended. Earth had scrapped nearly 30% of its old fleet, and the Caligo Nebula hummed with an energy no one could explain. Day 32. Terran freighters purchased 12 million metric tons of Starship-grade alloy. The order was listed under Civilian Infrastructure Renewal.
Civilian infrastructure does not require alloy that can withstand plasma bombardment. I request a formal trade audit under Senate Charter 7.
The chair denied the motion. Charter 7 required clear evidence of military diversion, evidence Margaret did not yet possess. Thomas filed his 30-day compliance report 3 hours later. 16 pages of meticulous data, each entry verified, the whole document perfectly useless.
He feeds me paperwork like an adult distracting a child. Every answer I want is buried under a mountain of irrelevant detail.
At the next progress meeting, Thomas answered every question with a lawyer's precision. He volunteered nothing, conceded nothing, and smiled through all of it.
I wanted to accuse him of deceit, but he only smiled that terrible patient smile, and I found myself saying nothing.
By day 50, Earth had purchased enough energy cells to power a continent. The funds came directly from the fleet reduction budget.
They are spending disarmament money on armament. I know it, but no one will listen until I bring proof.
Day 60. 54% of the old fleet was scrap, and Caligo pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and secret, shaping something no one would see until it was too late. Day 74. The last obsolete Terran cruiser was bisected in high orbit, its hull peeling apart like a peeled fruit. The live broadcast drew galactic applause.
The Terran fleet is no more. I will host a gala on day 90 to celebrate the peace we have won.
Day 90. You assume the game ends when the clock runs out, but the game hasn't even started.
On day 80, Thomas submitted his final compliance report. Implementation complete. Terran Republic fleet reduced by exactly 80%. Border stations reported all Terran signals within acceptable parameters. The alert level dropped to peacetime routine.
Why does my victory feel like a trap? Thomas Carver is congratulating me. He should be mourning.
In the Caligo Nebula, 12,000 construction cradles stood silent. Their work was done. Only the faintest blue glow betrayed the ships waiting inside. 12,000 docks. 12,000 warships. A new fleet, funded by the budget that was supposed to destroy the old one. In his embassy office, Thomas checked the calendar. Day 89. He allowed himself one quiet word.
Tomorrow they will understand what in spirit truly means.
At 0400 hours, every border station from Korvax to the outer fringe screamed with a single impossible contact. 12,000 Terran warships, each bleeding energy signatures that dwarfed the old fleet, emerged from the Caligo Nebula in perfect formation. The armada stretched to the cosmic horizon, a vast V of angular black cruisers with white war paint, blue electric engines pulsing in perfect sync.
This is a lie, a trick. The Terran fleet is scrap metal. I watched them cut it apart.
The gala fell silent. Every screen in the hall showed the same feed, 12,000 ships and counting. On every world, the broadcast replaced all programming. The impossible had become undeniable.
There it is. Right on schedule.
Within the hour, the Senate called an emergency session. Margaret demanded Thomas's presence, her voice shaking with fury.
I will have Ambassador Carver explain this treachery before the entire galaxy. He will answer for this betrayal of trust.
And in the corridor outside, Thomas adjusted his cuffs, smoothed his diplomatic suit, and walked toward the chamber with the same calm he had worn for 18 months. The chamber doors opened. Thomas Carver entered, and the roar of the Senate died like a snuffed flame.
You stand before the Senate under accusation of willful deception. 12,000 warships are not a dismantled fleet.
Thomas walked to the center of the floor, hands folded before him, and inclined his head in a gesture of absolute deference.
I demand an explanation. You accepted the terms, you scrapped your ships, and then you unleash a new armada. This is an act of aggression.
Madam Senator, I have only ever told this body the truth. If you will permit me to speak, I shall address every concern.
The chair, an ancient Setian with half-lidded eyes, leaned forward. The ambassador of the Terran Republic is recognized. The room stilled. Not a foot shuffled, not a whisper escaped. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath.
He should be trembling. He should beg for mercy. Why is he still smiling?
I will clarify not as an adversary, but as a servant of the law. Resolution 9-114 was honored to the letter.
And before Margaret could interrupt, the chair raised a hand, and the session belonged to the human.
The Terran Republic dismantled 80% of its war fleet, exactly as ordered. Here are the verified hull numbers, the salvage certificates, the complete manifest.
The holographic manifest scrolled for a full minute, every ship scrapped, every serial number dissolved into scrap. The record was flawless.
Then explain the 12,000 ships sitting in Caligo. You cannot scrap a fleet and replace it overnight with something worse.
The ships in Caligo are not the Terran fleet. They are a separate defensive formation, constructed under a different mandate, with a different purpose.
A ripple of murmurs swept the chamber. Thomas had drawn a line where none had existed, and the delegates began to grasp the shape of the trap.
A different mandate? The resolution demanded you disarm your military. Do not play word games with this Senate.
I play no games. Resolution 9-114 refers repeatedly to the fleet. Singular. Would the Senate's own Records Committee display its definition of that term?
The records officer, a small Arbolian, tapped frantically at her console. Then she froze. The word fleet appeared in the resolution 17 times. Not once was it accompanied by a legal definition.
I wrote every clause. I never defined. Oh no.
Resolution 9-1114 refers to the fleet. The ships in Caligo are designated the Terran Defensive Formation, an entirely separate entity.
The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted over each other, some in outrage, others in dawning, horrified admiration.
This is legal sophistry. The intent was clear: to strip humanity of its war-making capacity, not to rename it.
Intent is not law, Senator. The text is, and the text prohibits only the reduction of one fleet, which we have dutifully carried out.
He is twisting my words into a noose, and I handed him the rope.
Thomas produced financial records. The entire budget for fleet reduction had been diverted, legally, into the construction of the new formation. The irony struck the chamber silent for a full 3 seconds, then the noise redoubled, a thunderstorm of disbelief. Margaret gripped the podium, her knuckles white, her face a mask of crumbling authority. The gavel banged unheard.
The Terran Republic has been a faithful partner. We simply applied the law as it was written, nothing more.
The chair called for order, but the damage was irrevocable. The Senate had been outmaneuvered by a legal loophole a kilometer wide. Margaret slammed her palm against the podium, a desperate crack echoing through the chamber. She refused to accept silence.
This Senate does not exist to be outwitted by syntax. The spirit of the resolution was to protect the galaxy from Terran militarism. I move for an immediate vote on sanctions.
Sanctions require a separate resolution, with specific evidence of a treaty breach. This body has no such evidence. I must advise against an illegal maneuver.
He is quoting our own rules back at us. Every path I take he has already blocked. I am trapped.
The gallery fell into a heavy stillness. Even Margaret's own block would not meet her gaze. Pity, thick and silent, filled the air.
I will not let this body be made a fool. The galaxy will remember that we tried to do what was right, even if the law failed us.
Senator, no one here is a fool. But a law without precise language is not a law. It is a wish, and wishes cannot bind us.
The chair, an ancient Setian, raised a weary hand. The motion is out of order. This session stands adjourned. No gavel fell. The words were enough.
He won without raising his voice. He won because I wrote the law he used against me. There is no recovery from this.
And as Thomas walked out, not a single senator moved to stop him. The humans had read every word, and then they had written their own. The Setian chair gavelled the session closed with a final, echoing crack. Delegates rose, but no one moved toward the Corvaxian section.
My own block will not meet my eyes. They are already drafting the message that will ask for my resignation.
She stepped off the podium alone, the weight of her robes suddenly unbearable. No aide stepped forward to accompany her. In the corridor outside her office, she paused. Her nameplate still gleamed, but its political weight had vanished. At the Terran embassy, Thomas's aides erupted in quiet, professional relief. He silenced them with a raised hand.
Not yet. We do not celebrate. The Republic has done its duty. Let the record speak for itself.
Across the galaxy, news feeds broadcast the Terran legal coup. The Senate was eviscerated by its own verbatim record.
I built my legacy on this resolution. In a single session, Thomas Carver dismantled it with my own words.
The door to her office closed. Behind it, a political career lay in ruins, waiting only for the formal declaration. The Senate had voted to disarm Earth. Instead, Earth had taught the galaxy the price of a poorly defined word, and the invoice was far from settled. 3 days of silence. Then the Corvaxian caucus issued a statement so brief it could only be a funeral notice. A maintenance drone removed the nameplate from Senator Margaret Orlath's door. The metal was cool, unprotesting. Ambassador Carver's datapad received the same text. Senator Orlath has resigned her seat, effective immediately.
She fought to the end. I respect that, but the end was never in doubt.
He lifted a glass of water, the same chipped glass he had used for 18 months, and raised it once to the distant Earth.
To clarity of language.
On Earth, children lying in grass saw the new constellation shift, 12,000 blue stars in perfect parade orbit. Thomas set down the glass. The file was closed. The Senate would never again write a law without first consulting its dictionary. He straightened his jacket, opened the office door, and walked down the corridor toward routine. Head high. Always head high. And where Margaret's name had gleamed, only a faint outline remained. The galaxy's first disarmament that doubled military power was complete. Within a week, the Senate issued a statement, not an apology, not a concession, but a formal acknowledgement of the Terran defensive formation. The Armada's patrol routes became fixtures on civilian star maps. Blue electric engines, once a terror, now a comfort to human merchants. Ambassador Carver attended the next session's budget review, a tedious affair about cargo tariffs. He sat in the back, reading reports, entirely unremarkable. The new Corvaxian delegate passed him a note requesting a private meeting. She wanted to clarify terms before proposing any legislation.
They learn quickly. A law without a definition is just a suggestion.
He filed the note without responding. 17 similar requests waited. The galaxy had discovered a sudden passion for precise legal drafting. On Earth, Armada flyovers became a weekly event. Fleet Week, they called it. Children collected holographic cards of the new cruisers. The Terran Republic had not only survived the Senate's attempt at disarmament, it had turned it into the largest military expansion in galactic history. And Thomas Carver, the quiet man in the dark blue suit, walked the same corridor every morning. Head high, always head high. The faint outline of Margaret's nameplate remained for years, a reminder that the humans always read the fine print. Late in his office, Thomas loosened his tie for the first time in 18 months. The silk slid free like a held breath released. He picked up a small photo from his desk, a woman and 2 children, laughing on a beach that no longer existed.
I kept them safe. That was the only victory that ever mattered.
He had never doubted the outcome, but the weight of carrying a secret for 540 days pressed on his shoulders like a second suit. The Armada's distant glow patterned the ceiling. 12,000 ships, silent and ready.
We did not lie. We simply understood their language better than they did.
On Earth, a child pointed at the new constellation and asked its name. A parent answered, "Home." Thomas closed the office for the night. The door clicked shut with a sound that felt like the end of a long chapter. Head high. Always head high. But now, just for a moment, his shoulders could rest. And in orbit, the new Navy held its silent watch, waiting for a day it would never need to fire. 1 year later, the Senate's official history of the affair was a single page. Resolution 9-114, superseded by clarification. Above Earth, The Armada held its orbit. Not a threat, a promise. The promise that humanity's ink would always outweigh another's steel. The Corvaxians had tried to legislate peace. The humans had simply listened, read the fine print, and built 12,000 reasons never to try again. A child on Earth, older now, traced a cruiser's silhouette with her finger. "What do they do up there?" she asked. Her mother smiled, a distant look in her eyes. "They remind the galaxy that we are not to be disarmed by a vote. We are to be respected." Thomas Carver retired 3 years later. He never wrote a memoir. He never gave an interview. His only public statement was a single sentence: "I served. On a clear night, you can see them from the southern hemisphere. 12,000 stars moving in perfect silence. They are not weapons. They are proof." The humans had read every word, and then they had written their own. Centuries later, a Corvaxian scholar would write, "The humans did not fight our law, they joined it, and then they redefined its shape." Thomas Carver's name would appear in footnotes only. He never sought more. He had done what his nation needed. The Armada would serve for 97 years without firing a single shot in anger. Its greatest weapon was its existence. That same child, now a woman, would stand in the same field and explain to her own daughter why those lights had never moved. "They are not weapons," she would say. "They are proof." And then she would smile, because she had been told the same. The Senate chamber would one day hang a portrait of Margaret Orlath, not as a tribute, but as a warning. And every class of new delegates would pause beneath it. As their instructor said, "Never write a law until you have defined every word." Thomas Carver would die quietly, at home on a Tuesday. His last word was not recorded. It was probably not dramatic. And the Armada would shine on, silent, until the day it was finally decommissioned and replaced by something quieter but no less deadly, hidden in the fine print. The humans had read every word, and then they had written their own. 1,000 years later, a child on a colony world found an old coin bearing the Terran crest. She turned it over in her palm. Her grandmother, seated nearby, recognized the symbol. She had seen it on old documentaries and on the hulls of silent ships that still orbited the capital. "We built them during a debate," she said. "While the galaxy argued, we worked, and when the vote came, we had already written a new future." The child looked up. "Did they fight?" she asked. "No," the grandmother said. "They never had to. That was the point." And on the 100 worlds of the Terran Republic, the story was passed down like an heirloom. Resolution 9114 was the best thing that ever happened to the human military. The Senate's fear had gifted humanity a peace so absolute that its warships became mere ornaments, forgotten except in gratitude. A single plaque in the Senate library reads, Resolution 9114, author Senator Margaret Orlath, consequence, Terran defensive formation, lesson, define your terms. And the young girl clutching the coin understood for the first time that words were the sharpest weapon her species had ever wielded. She would grow up to become a diplomat, and she would never write a treaty without a glossary. The humans had read every word, and then they had written their own. The Senate gallery now expanded to 300 species, hushed as a young human delegate rose. Her datapad glowed with a glossary. The proposed resolution defined every term. Fleet read, a single integrated formation under unified command, distinct from any other formation. A full clause on semantics. She smiled, remembering the ancient lesson. Define your terms, or they will be defined for you. In a quiet archive, a visitor found a faded note. Proceed at pace. It was framed beside a chipped glass. The note had no author. It was the most precious artifact of the Terran diplomatic corps, kept not for value, but for what it represented. Back in the chamber, the vote was unanimous. No one wanted to be the next Margaret Orlath. When the session ended, the human delegate left her seat and walked the same corridor Thomas Carver had walked, head high, always head high. and above 1,000 worlds the Armada still shone. Not as a threat, but as the galaxy's longest bibliography. A little girl, the daughter of that diplomat, asked her mother, "Why do we always define everything?" The mother smiled and pointed to the lights, because a long time ago, someone forgot, and we promised never to forget again. The little girl watched the lights until her neck ached. She would remember this night for the rest of her life. As she grew, the Armada became her constant. Not a threat, but a reminder of what her people had done with nothing but patience and a dictionary. She would study law, not for conflict, but for clarity. Every word she wrote would carry the weight of that night. And when she finally stood in the Senate herself, she would carry a glossary, a physical one, printed on paper, as a tradition. No Korvaxian would ever again mistake a human document for an invitation to dictate. The lesson was too expensive, and the Armada, now a tourist attraction, still orbited. Tourists would ask, "Did they ever fire?" The answer never changed. No. That was the point. A statue of Thomas Carver was erected not in the Senate, but outside the Terran embassy, where he had stood every morning with his glass of water. Its plaque read only, "To clarity of language." And on quiet nights, the diplomat's daughter would bring her own children there. She would point up and say, "That is how we won without fighting." The humans had read every word, and then they had written their own. Dawn broke over the embassy plaza. The statue of Thomas Carver cast a long shadow over the cobblestones. An elderly woman, the diplomat's daughter, now silver-haired, placed a single flower at the statue's base. She did not speak. She didn't need to. Above, the Armada's lights faded with the sunrise, 12,000 blue stars yielding to a single golden one. She looked up, remembering the first time she had seen them as a child, when her mother had pointed and said, "That is how we won without fighting." The galaxy had tried to disarm humanity with words. Instead, humanity had written a reply so thorough that it had never needed a second draft. A new generation of children played in the plaza, their laughter echoing off the statue. They knew the story. Everyone knew the story. In the Senate library, a single page still hung on the wall. Resolution 9-1114. Consequence: Terran defensive formation. Lesson: define your terms. And on Earth, every evening, the old diplomat would sit on a bench, look up, and smile, because the lights were still there. The humans had read every word, and then they had written a piece that would outlast empires. Silence. A little girl, no older than the diplomat had once been, tugged at her sleeve and pointed toward the sky.
Grandma, why do they never come down? Because they don't need to, sweetheart. They are already home.
The girl's eyes reflected the blue lights, a living constellation that had guarded 10,000 generations without ever firing a shot. She patted the bench beside her, and the child climbed up, nestling into the familiar warmth of the oldest story in the galaxy. And above them, the Armada drifted, silent, patient, eternal. It had no need to chase the galaxy. The galaxy had learned to navigate around it. The stars wheeled overhead, but the Armada remained, a woven net of blue light that had once been 12,000 promises and had never broken a single one. When the girl yawned, the woman lifted her easily, the same strength that had carried a species across the void. In the empty Senate library, the plaque still read, Resolution 9-1114. Consequence: Terran defensive formation. Lesson: define your terms. Fade to black.